The life of Jimmy Stewart. He wasn't the flashiest star in Hollywood. He didn't dazzle with scandals or swagger. Instead, Jimmy Stewart won the world with a stammer, a pause, and a pair of honest eyes that made audiences believe. But behind that gentle smile was a man of steel, a decorated World War II combat pilot, a lifelong friend to Henry Fonda, and the actor who, with director Frank Capra, gave America some of its most enduring stories. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and It's a Wonderful Life. From small-town boy to Hollywood legend. From Capra's idealistic hero to Hitchcock's haunted detective, Stewart's journey was one of humility, courage, and artistry. This is more than a movie star's biography. It is the story of a man who showed us that greatness lies not in glamour, but in sincerity and strength of character. Jimmy Stewart, the everyman who became a legend. In Hollywood's golden age, there were stars who burned bright with glamour and scandal. And then there was James "Jimmy" Stewart. Stewart, a man whose power came not from glitter, but from truth. He was tall and lean, with a drawl that seemed hesitant, even shy. Yet when he spoke, the world leaned closer, believing every word. He was America's neighbor, brother, soldier, and dreamer all at once. Stewart's life was more than the story of a movie star. It was the story of a man whose honesty shaped his art, whose courage shaped his country, and whose gentleness shaped his legacy. From small town to big dreams. Jimmy Stewart was born James Maitland Stewart on May 20th, 1908, in Indiana, Pennsylvania. His father ran the family hardware store, a business that had been in the family for generations. His mother nurtured him with love and faith. Friends and family called him Jimmy, a name that stuck even after he was billed formally as James Stewart on screen. As a boy, he built model airplanes and dreamed of flying. Acting was far from his mind. He studied architecture at Princeton University, but fate interrupted. Stewart joined the Princeton Triangle Club, a student theater group, and discovered the stage. He had something different. Awkward pauses, a stammering rhythm, and a natural way of speaking that made audiences trust him. What seemed like hesitation was in fact craft. Stewart used silence and pauses like brushstrokes, painting his characters with nervous honesty, sincerity, or thoughtfulness. After graduating, he tried his hand in New York theater. There, he shared an apartment with another young actor, Henry Fonda. The two became lifelong friends, bound by humor, respect, and loyalty, even though their politics differed greatly. That friendship endured for decades, a personal anchor amid Hollywood's storms. Hollywood finds its everyman. By the mid-1930s, Stewart had begun to appear in Hollywood films. He wasn't handsome in the polished, sharp-edged way of Cary Grant or Clark Gable, but that was exactly his strength. He looked like someone you knew, the man who might deliver the mail, run the hardware store, or sit beside you at church. This quality caught the eye of director Frank Capra, who specialized in populist, optimistic stories about ordinary people, fighting against corruption or despair. Together, Stewart and Capra created two of the most enduring films in American cinema. In Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, 1939, Stewart played Jefferson Smith, a young senator who filibusters against corruption until his voice nearly breaks. The film electrified audiences and earned Stewart his first Oscar nomination. 7 years later, in It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, Capra cast Stewart as George Bailey, a man on the edge of despair, who learns through an angel's guidance how deeply he has touched the lives of others. Stewart poured his wartime experiences and inner struggles into George Bailey, giving the performance rawness and truth. Today, the film remains one of the most beloved in history, played every Christmas as a hymn to human worth. Capra and Stewart were perfect partners. Capra believed in the nobility of ordinary people, and Stewart embodied it with every pause, every stammer, every flicker of sincerity in his eyes. The soldier's burden. When World War II erupted, Jimmy Stewart was not just a star, he was one of the brightest names in Hollywood. Yet, at the very height of his fame, he walked away from the glamour of film sets and red carpets to answer a deeper call: service to his country. At first, his path was not smooth. Stewart tried to enlist but was rejected for being underweight. Many would have accepted this as fate, but not Stewart. He changed his diet, worked tirelessly to add pounds, and returned determined. His persistence paid off. He was finally accepted into the U.S. Army Air Corps in 1941. He began humbly, not as a celebrated officer, but as a private learning side by side with ordinary recruits. Yet his skill and focus in the cockpit soon stood out. Stewart trained as a pilot, proving himself again and again, rising step by step through the ranks. His promotions were not gifts of fame. They were earned by grit, discipline, and courage. Stewart eventually flew 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe, piloting B-24 bombers in some of the most dangerous skies of the war. He led men into battles where survival was never guaranteed, carrying the burden of responsibility for their lives. Unlike many celebrities who entertained troops from a safe distance, Stewart lived the soldier's reality: fear, exhaustion, and the constant risk of death. By war's end, he had risen to the rank of colonel, and later, in the Air Force Reserve, to brigadier general, one of the highest-ranking actors in U.S. history. But those years of service left their mark. Stewart returned home older, quieter, and deeply changed. Friends noticed it in his eyes, in the pauses of his speech, in the new shadows that haunted him. Yet those shadows also deepened his art. When he stood before the camera again, there was a weight behind his words, an authenticity that came from having faced life and death. His patriotism had cost him something, but it gave his performances a depth no acting school could ever teach. A darker screen presence. After the war, Stewart's acting shifted. Gone was only the bright-eyed idealist. In his place stood a man who knew fear, loss, and obsession. This change gave him a second, perhaps even greater career. With director Alfred Hitchcock, Stewart explored darker corners of human nature. In Rear Window 1954, he played a photographer confined to a wheelchair, peering into neighbors' apartments and uncovering a possible murder. In Vertigo 1958, he portrayed a detective consumed by obsession and despair. These roles revealed Stewart's astonishing range. He could be troubled, haunted, even broken, yet still hold the audience's empathy. Stewart also reinvented himself in westerns, particularly through his collaboration with director Anthony Mann. In films like The Naked Spur 1953, he played complex, morally torn characters, far removed from the gentle George Bailey. These films showed that Stewart was not simply America's nice guy. He was one of its most versatile actors. Honors, awards, and lasting influence. Hollywood recognized Stewart's contributions. He won the Academy Award for The Philadelphia Story, 1940. In 1985, he received an honorary Academy Award for his half-century of memorable performances, and the American Film Institute's Lifetime Achievement Award. President Ronald Reagan awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. These awards confirmed what audiences already knew. Jimmy Stewart was not just a movie star, he was an American treasure. Beyond the screen, Stewart used his platform to support the military. As a decorated veteran, he became a symbol of service and patriotism, encouraging others to serve and lending his voice to military causes throughout his life. A quiet, steady life. Unlike many stars, Stewart's private life was steady. He married Gloria Hattrick McLean in 1949, and their marriage lasted until her death in 1994. They raised 4 children, and Stewart remained devoted to his family. Friends described him as modest, loyal, and kind. Even at the height of fame, he never forgot the values of his small-town upbringing. His friendship with Henry Fonda endured for over half a century. The two men, so different in politics and style, often spent quiet evenings together, building model airplanes or painting. It was a bond that spoke to Stewart's gift for loyalty and human connection. The final bow. In the twilight of his life, Stewart stepped back from acting, though he remained a beloved figure. His wife's death in 1994 broke his spirit, and his health declined. On July 2nd, 1997, Jimmy Stewart passed away at the age of 89. The world mourned not only the loss of a great actor, but also of a man who embodied integrity in a time of glamour and excess. Legacy of a gentle giant. Jimmy Stewart's legacy is vast. His films remain classics, his acting style is studied to this day, and his image continues to represent honesty, courage, and humility. He showed that a pause, a stutter, a simple glance could reveal more truth than a shout or a grand gesture. He was, in every way, the everyman who became extraordinary. In a Hollywood filled with glittering illusions, Jimmy Stewart stood for something real. His story reminds us that greatness is not found in arrogance or fame, but in sincerity, loyalty, and quiet strength. And that is why, decades after his passing, we still look at his films and feel, perhaps more than with any other actor, that we are looking into the heart of a true human being.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Glitter. Definition: bright sparkling light or showy appearance that attracts attention. Example: the city lights glitter at night, but true happiness is often found in quieter places. 2. Nurtured. Definition: cared for, supported, and helped to grow or develop. Example: the teacher nurtured her students' curiosity by encouraging their questions. 3. Build. Definition: announced or advertised publicly, especially in entertainment or business. Example: the young actor was billed as the next rising star of Hollywood. 4. Craft. Definition: a skill or art developed through practice and effort. Example: writing is a craft that improves with patience and dedication. 5. Filibuster. Definition: a long speech in a lawmaking body meant to delay or block a vote. Example: the senator began a filibuster that lasted for hours to prevent the bill from passing. 6. Electrified. Definition: to excite or inspire someone strongly, almost like sending a shock of energy. Example: the audience was electrified by the actor's emotional performance. 7. Stammer. Definition: a speech pattern with pauses or repeated sounds caused by nervousness or difficulty speaking. Example: he tried to answer the question, but could only stammer in front of the large crowd. 8. Flicker. Definition: a brief movement, change, or unsteady light. Example: a flicker of doubt crossed her face before she smiled again. 9. Glamour. Definition: attractive charm, beauty, or elegance often connected with wealth or fame. Example: the glamour of the film industry hides the hard work behind the scenes. 10. Great. Definition: strength of character shown through courage, determination, and perseverance. Example: the young soldier showed grit by completing his mission despite the hardships. 11. Authenticity. Definition: the quality of being real, true, and genuine. Example: the authenticity of her emotions made the audience believe every word. 12. Confined. Definition: restricted or limited to a certain space or situation. Example: the patient was confined to his hospital bed for several weeks. 13. Empathy. Definition: the ability to understand and share another person's feelings. Example: she showed empathy by listening carefully and comforting her friend. 14. Versatile. Definition: able to adapt or be useful in many different ways or situations. Example: he is a versatile musician who can play both classical and jazz with skill. 15. Upbringing. Definition: the way a child is raised and the values taught by their family. Example: her honest and respectful nature reflected her strong upbringing.
Comprehension Test. 1. What was Jimmy Stewart's full birth name and where was he born? Answer: his full name was James Maitland Stewart, and he was born in Indiana, Pennsylvania, on May 20th, 1908. 2. What career did Stewart originally plan to pursue before becoming an actor? Answer: Stewart studied architecture at Princeton University and originally planned to become an architect. 3. How did Stewart develop his distinctive acting style? Answer: his style included hesitant speech, pauses, and stammering rhythms, which he used deliberately to make characters seem authentic. Thoughtful or nervous? 4. Which director is most closely linked with Stewart's early success? And why was their partnership important? Answer: Frank Capra. Their partnership was powerful because Capra's populous, optimistic stories matched Stewart's everyman quality. Together, they made enduring classics like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and It's a Wonderful Life. 5. What role did Stewart play in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and why was it significant? Answer: he played Jefferson Smith, a young senator fighting corruption. His passionate filibuster became a symbol of honesty and courage, earning Stewart his first Oscar nomination. 6. Why was Stewart's performance in It's a Wonderful Life particularly powerful? Answer: he drew on his wartime experiences and struggles, giving the role of George Bailey raw emotion and authenticity. The film later became a timeless Christmas classic. 7. What made Stewart's military service during World War II unusual for a Hollywood star? Answer: unlike many celebrities who perform symbolic duties, Stewart flew 20 combat missions over Europe and rose to the rank of colonel, later brigadier general. 8. How did Stewart's acting change after the war? Answer: his roles became darker and more complex, showing characters haunted by fear, obsession, or moral conflict. This shift deepened his reputation as a versatile actor. 9. Name 2 directors Stewart worked with after the war, and the kinds of roles they gave him. Answer: Alfred Hitchcock. Roles in thrillers like Rear Window and Vertigo showed him as troubled and obsessive. Anthony Mann. Westerns like The Naked Spur revealed morally torn and complex characters. 10. What were some of the major awards Stewart received in his lifetime? Answer: he won the Academy Award for Best Actor. The Philadelphia Story received an honorary Oscar in 1985, the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. 11. What was unique about Stewart's friendship with Henry Fonda? Answer: they were lifelong friends from their days as New York roommates, and despite having different political views, they stayed close for decades, often enjoying simple hobbies together. 12. How is Stewart's legacy remembered today? Answer: Stewart is remembered as an American treasure, a man who combined sincerity, humility, and courage with acting brilliance. His films remain classics, and his everyman persona continues to symbolize honesty and integrity.